Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for checking out this video. I wanted to speak to you and give you some insight on the case regarding teenager Pieper Lewis. Now, the two individuals a part of this case, well, actually three, but the two major characters of this case are Pieper Lewis and Zachary Brooks. Now, there is a third person involved. I do want to note before proceeding that the individual that sold, in essence, Pieper to Zachary Brooks has not been named. No indication that he's been arrested from the different articles that I read. It may have changed by the time that I post this video, but I do want to mention that I do not have a photo of said trafficker, and I do not know the status of any criminal charges being held against him. But let's just proceed further just so that I can give you the case, the basis of this case, and why I believe that even though this child will soon be out of the juvenile detention center, I feel that the law that is being used against her is barbaric in nature and needs to be updated. Now, in this case, at the age of 15, back on June the 1st of 2020, Pieper Lewis was in the home with Zachary Brooks, but not consensually. Now, what the circumstances that we know based on what Pieper provided was that she was living in hallways and there was a man who reached out to her and said, "Hey, you're homeless, come live with me, I'll take care of you." And being that she ran away from her abusive adopted mother, hearing those words of somebody saying, "I care for you and I want to take care of you," that enticed her, and so she went with him. Not shortly after running away and living with him, he started having her engage in intimacy, non-consensual intimacy with multiple men. And one of those men was Zachary Brooks, 28-year-old Zachary Brooks, married man, a father of 3 children. Now, one of the times before she knew that she was going to be engaging in that activity with him, he would take them over, and at first she thought it was going to be hopefully just more of a kickback. They're just going to sit there. They gave her some alcohol, they gave her some marijuana. She was like, okay. Well, actually what these gentlemen were doing were actually trying to get her to fall asleep. And so certain times she was unconscious, and Zachary Brooks, after making his payment, violated her. And she would wake up and she would find out, like, oh my gosh, somebody was inside of me, and the only person there was Zachary Brooks. And so for at least 5 times, Zachary Brooks did violate her. And most of those times she was unconscious. So the last time that she went over to his house, and she was taken there, even though she didn't want to go, her boyfriend, or pimp in this case, put a knife to her head and said, "You are going to go there, and you are going to engage in intimacy with this man," because he made payment. So, unwillingly, she went to that home. And once again, while unconscious, he started having intercourse with her. He thrusted and thrusted inside of her, and she woke up. And she was screaming, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" But her cries were not listened to. And then when he was finished, wiped himself off and fell asleep. And while staring at her, all she was reminded of the abuse that she went through with her so-called adopted mother, her so-called protector, her boyfriend, now pimp, and the multitudes of men that ran up in her. She looked at him, and with anger, she grabbed a knife that was on the bedstand and stabbed him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 30 times she stabbed this male. I will not give him the title of man. She stabbed this male up to 30 times. The anger in her, she finally had to release it, and she thought she can get away now. And she ran and she left. But shortly thereafter, she was arrested. The police listened and they were like, we get it. You had to get out. But they had to do what they were supposed to do. They gave all the information to the prosecutor. The prosecutor came in and was like, you know he was asleep when you stabbed him. She was like, yes, but I snapped. He just kept coming inside of me. He didn't care when I cried to him. He just didn't care. He just kept taking my body, inserting himself in my body. And the prosecutor was like, but he was asleep. And we're going to charge you with first-degree murder. So with that, hearing that her life can actually be taken even again. But now by the penal system, she was like, what do I do? And so they're like, if you sign here and you take a plea agreement, we won't give you life, but you'll get up to 20 years potentially. But we'll go to sentencing what you're going to get. So she agreed to those terms. So this happened, like I said, in 2020. And now, this year, she went in front of the judge and she was like, I agree I made a mistake. I agree I did wrong. And so the judge was like, okay, now what I'm going to do, part of the plea agreement, I'm going to give you 5 years of probation. Now, if you do any type of crime during that time, you will go back to prison and you will do the time. It'll be 10 or up to 20 years. Now, a part of the plea agreement, due to Iowa law, she has to pay $150,000 in restitution to the victim's family. And I know you're probably sitting there like, wait, how does the victim pay the abuser $150,000? Well, it's an Iowa law that any crime such as this, the person that does it has to pay restitution. And if they're passed away, they have to send it or provide it to their heir. In this case, whoever their family members are, of Zachary Brooks. And everybody who heard about this was like, what do you mean you're going to charge a child and then tell her to pay for what happened to her? So a teacher put a GoFundMe, and thank God people paid into it, and now it's well over $500,000. So they're going to help if the monies can be used, it'll be used to pay for the restitution, and then she'll do whatever sees fit with the rest of the money, and hopefully she can use that to
If by the
start a
time
new
that
life.
I post this video, the GoFundMe for Pieper Lewis is still open and active, I will post a link either in the description or pinned comment, and you guys can of course donate to help with not only to pay for the restitution, but potentially help in her starting a new life once she is released from the juvenile detention center.
Why is it that we're penalizing children when we know they were trafficked, we know they were violated at a young age, yet we're seeing the perpetrators more as the victims rather than the children? So for me, I think it should be obvious Pieper Lewis is the victim in all way. And Zachary Brooks, honestly, if he was alive, he would be the one paying. And so she honestly shouldn't pay. But I know at this point, per the law, she has to pay. And so I'm glad that people came through and gave that money. But that money should also now be used to get her counseling and to take her way out of Iowa, because I don't want the adopted mother coming after her or the alleged pimp. She needs to get away. But we also really need to start thinking about, who are we really punishing here?
Well, I do want to thank you
Because
again for
if
taking
we
this
want
time to
children to
listen
be
to
able
my
to come to us and
insight
tell us,
on
hey, something's
the
going wrong with
Pieper
me,
Lewis
we shouldn't be
case.
threatening them with possible jail time.
If you have thoughts, if you disagree, or if you
what
do
year
agree,
are we in
let's keep
when
this
this is
conversation
even a
going.
discussion?
Comment below.
How does a prosecutor
If you have any
look into this
suggestions,
little girl's
email
eyes,
me,
into
or
this
of course
baby's
comment
eyes, and
below.
say,
And I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to talk about it,
entered
because
you repeatedly
we all should have
by
our own
force,
point of view.
but
Thank you so much for
you should have
taking
known
your
better.
time to listen to mine.
Think
See
about
you in
that
the
for a
next
moment.
one. Bye, y'all.